inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today's conversation is with author, speaker, and TV host Krissy Nelson. The first time I spoke to Krissy, I connected with her right away, and we spent an hour talking about our wild, crazy, and amazing adventures with God. And I love what it says on our website. It says that Krissy empowers you to take practical steps with a simple yes that's drenched in outrageous childlike faith. I absolutely agree, and you'll hear how she is living that out in her own life and business during this conversation. Now, before we get started, I want to make sure you know about our Firestarter School. Firestarter School walks you through key foundations and practical applications that will help you to confidently partner with God at greater levels in your business. It's all about positioning you to experience His best and have a greater kingdom impact in the marketplace. It's an MP3 audio course available via mobile app, so I guess you can say it's like having me as a mentor in your pocket. I truly believe that if you are a listener of this podcast and enjoy what you're hearing and learning, you are going to want to grab Firestarter School. And guess what? Lifetime access to the course is available at the price of your choice. Yes, you heard that correctly. So head over to our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/firestarterschool and get all the details. Now let's get started with today's conversation with Krissy Nelson. Listen in and enjoy. Krissy Nelson, how are you, sis?
Hey, I'm good. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's funny that we're here together. We basically know a lot of the same people. And so we just kept showing up in each other's spaces. And then that led to the two of us getting together. And so I am grateful to have you here on the podcast and look forward to digging into your adventures with God and business and ministry and all the things that He's got you involved in. So thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, I got to tell you, so I was looking up when I was reading your bio and I was just kind of hanging around on your website a little bit. And the words created for the impossible just kept like standing out to me. And I know, you have a book by that title. You've got a show by that title. And I don't know, maybe conferences. I don't know, however many things you've got going on with that title. Yeah. But I was like, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that adventure for you. Because whenever God gives us a message for somebody else, it's always because He's walked us through it, or in the process of continuing to walk us through it. So I just want to talk to you about, your adventures of being led and empowered by Holy Spirit and the work that you do. So let's start by having you share how you just got started in doing what you do.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when I was 15, God marked my life after an encounter with Him where I was this young, insecure girl. And I needed to know that my life mattered. I needed to know that in like the simplicity and the norm and the ordinary, this is the language I have now 20 years later for it, but it's like, that was the cry of my heart then. It just felt there was this vacancy. It's like, God, if I matter to you, I need to know that you're real. I need to know who you are. And God met me in that spot, and I encountered His love. I encountered His embrace. He held me in His arms literally through an entire evening. And I woke up the next morning with this fresh identity of, I'm God's daughter.
Wow.
I know who I am. I know how important I am. I'm a daughter of God Almighty. I know Him as Abba. It's like that relationship was sealed at that point in my life. And I wish I could say that catapulted me into the impossible and like where I am now. But unfortunately, I let discouragement set in because it's like all the things that I thought I was going to do, the books I was going to write, the people I was going to speak to, I was thinking, by 21, 22, we're going to be changing the world, right?
Yes.
And that just was not my story. My story was my husband and I got married young, and these things kept coming in the mail that needed to be paid, and they were bills. And we were like, oh, we need to have jobs, normal jobs. No, we can't just be globetrotting. Like, oh, and just the reality of life hit us. And because we didn't really have strong mentors in our life at the time, it was like all or nothing, and we sort of traded in the ministry side of life, and we didn't know about integrating the two. We didn't know, about being a kingdom driven entrepreneur at that time,
Right.
So it was like, we just jumped into the workforce. And for me, I'm an all in kind of gal. It's like, when I'm there, I'm all there. And so for me, the workforce became my identity. It became who I was. And I started to trade in what God said he wanted to do with my life for what was available to me right then. And that was opportunity, the corporate ladder, climb.
Yeah, I do.
And what I ended up doing was I started doing it in my own strength. I started to strive. I started to reach for and grab, and I had favor. I think it's like, you see how God's hand is on your life, and that favor, it exists whether you're leaning on God or not, know? And because that's just the vastness of him. And so that's a wild concept. I mean, we could go on that tangent,
That's a whole other conversation.
I'll stay with your question about the impossible in my journey. But so I was climbing the corporate ladder, and it was when I had my kids, my daughter, my first baby, that all of a sudden it's like, I'm at home, I'm holding my baby girl, and I'm on maternity leave, which I thought I was starting a new business with someone. And I'm like, yeah, give me a week and I'll be back. It's like, don't worry about it. I'll have this baby and I'll be right. It's okay. We built my office to be big enough to make sure a bassinet could be in there. We built it a whole wall of a window, or it was a window wall, so that I could see my daughter in there. And so I could be walking around it's just sounds so crazy to me. I was a driven entrepreneur,
yes.
Minus kingdom, just driven entrepreneur.
Yes.
And so I have my baby girl. I'm holding her in my arms in the middle of the night one night. And all of a sudden, it's like everything that I had built, I'm looking at this daughter, and I'm like, not only do I feel like I don't really want that anymore, but that foundation that I thought was so strong began to crumble. Wow. Why was it crumbling? Because it was something that I had built, on my own, my strength. And I mean, I worked really hard for it. The grind.
Yes, I know the grind.
Yeah. And it was in that moment that I was like, I cried out to God again for the first time. And I looked up at him and I'm like, God, who am I? What do you want from me? What am I supposed to be doing? And he spoke to me in that moment, and he said, Krissy, look down. And I looked down at my little newborn baby girl in my arms. And he said, that right there, that's who you are. And that's what I want from you. And it was twofold. It was, I am her mother, and I'm to, be holding her in my arms. That's right. And it was also, I'm his daughter, and I'm to be held by him, just like I was all those years ago. So all of a sudden, it's like all this drive, all this grind. It was like that entrepreneur in me was harnessed into like everything you represent, being kingdom driven. And my priorities shifted, and they got in line. And it was like God became the head once again. I put him right back in his rightful place. And from there, it was like, it wasn't like, this is what happened. From there, all the dreams, the books, the people, the ministry, all of those things that he had shown me in my youth became like front and center. And I made a decision. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. Why not? And so over the course of a couple of years, then I had another baby. It was like God began to woo me with these phrases that I would see all over the place in magazines and articles, go for it. If not now, when? Do something, and I'd open my mailbox and there'd be a flyer, do something or go for it, if not now, when? And then I read an article about somebody who was a writer and how it was, just sit down and start writing, down and start writing. So one day in it was January 7th, 2012.
You're like me.
Random one day. Okay.
Yes, you know the date.
I know the date. January 7th, 2012, I had a 3-month-old baby boy and a toddler girl, and it was nap time. And at my kitchen table during nap time, I went for it. I did something. If not now, when? I sat down and I started writing. And it was this like one paragraph that looked to be like a blog post, you know? And I'm like, oh, people have told me you should start a blog. I don't know what that is, but hey, let's just look that up. So I started a blog. And from there, it was like, it's like something happened in my heart where you talk about being creative for the impossible. We're all creative for the impossible. It's a matter of, are we going to believe that?
Yeah.
And then what are we going to do with that? Because when we're a kingdom-driven entrepreneur, we know that the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in us. All right. And so we know that without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so those things are what catapult us into the impossible. And it's our faith that like grabs on in agreement with, okay, I have the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead in me. And I know that Jesus said, you know, with God, all things are possible. So whatever it is that he's telling me I'm supposed to do, write a book, okay, have a TV show, okay, I'll just go for it, you know? And it's
no idea how to write books, didn't even know what a blog was, had no idea what to do with television.
No, and I still don't, you know? I just do it. I just do it. Why? You know, and that's my journey. It's like, so when I started writing my first book, before it even had a title, before it was even called Creative for the Impossible, and I was starting to write it and starting to get the kind of core concepts for it, I would wake up really early in the morning. And I remember one morning making my way from the kitchen to the couch with a cup of coffee in hand. And the Holy Spirit stopped me and he whispered something in my ear. And it was something I had heard a couple years prior by a ministry leader, Marilyn Hickey. She had said it one time and it hit my heart then. And the Holy Spirit reminded me of it in this moment. And he said, Krissy, God thinks you can do anything. And I go, oh, yeah, you know, and I got it. It's like, I got it. If God thinks I can do anything, he knows it because he's put his spirit inside me for it. And if God thinks I can do anything, then who am I to argue with God? You know? So that kind of became the working title of my first book. And then through the publishing process and everything, we landed on Creative for the Impossible. And I love that. But that's like the thrust with it all. That's the thing that we come into agreement with, is that God thinks we can do anything. You know, he knows it. He parted heaven and earth to make that possible by giving us Christ, you know, his son, in that sacrifice. So why not? You know, why not go for the things that God's put in our path? And so that's really what I live from, you know, and I always say it's like, if I'm going to write a book called Creative for the Impossible, I better be ready to live that out, you know, and then have a show. It's like, well, I better be ready to test that thing out. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm just testing that out so I can tell others, yeah, really, for sure.
Yeah, that's so good. And then where did TV come from? So you're telling me when you were a teenager, so God showed you a vision as a teenager of writing books and of doing television.
Not television,
just the books.
He showed me people. I saw faces, like crowds and faces and stuff. So I always knew that I was going to be speaking to people. But television was nowhere on my radar.
Where did that one come up from?
It started to come on my radar. I just didn't realize it until after I was doing it. It's like, oh, that's why you started showing me cameras. Like, oh, that's what that was about, you know? So it was after I wrote my first book, Creative for the Impossible, and it was the busy season of like it launching and releasing, the release date and all that. And it came out in May of 2017. And a couple months later, my kids and I, we were getting out of town. We were going to drive north to see family, and we were on a road trip. My husband had to work. So I'm like, honey, can I just hop in the car and take the kids up north to see family? It's like, go for it. So I'm driving and my brain is just like crickets. Like, it was such a full season. I welcomed the silence. My kids were watching a movie on their tablets and I'm just driving. And it's like, usually when you drive, you have all these ideas, creative vision, right?
Yes.
Like you talk to the Lord, he's talking to you, or you're on the phone with people. You're like multitasking while you're traveling,
Yep.
That's a great time for that. But for me, it was silence. And I didn't even have music on. I'm not kidding. I just drove in silence for hours and hours and hours, about 8 hours, not kidding. So we're somewhere around Nashville and it's just pure silence. And I'm driving and all of a sudden, and I can still see like the Nashville, the city skyline and everything in view. But all of a sudden this banner goes in front of my eye line from the Holy Spirit. And on it, it says Created for the Impossible TV. And all of a sudden just vision, like a movie reel, begins to play in front of my eye line. And I'm like, okay, a TV show. Wow, you've just downloaded vision for that. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. And the funny thing is that I had known people who'd had television shows and I saw how much work went into it. And so I had actually pinpointed that one thing and said, oh, I'll never do that. I'll talk to people, I'll travel, whatever, but I'll never do TV, and I had totally written it off. And here the Lord is going, whoosh, Created for the Impossible TV. But the vision came with it. And with the vision came the desire, the passion, the yes. And I'm like, I'll call the station right now, And the Lord said, no. He said, wait. And I go, oh, okay. All right. This is one of those waiting things. So long story short, few months go by. I just put it before the Lord. One day I was in my closet, just crying out to God, and crying out to him, how our hearts get to that point. And it's like, You're trying to say something to me, so I'm going to meet you there. What is it, God?
Yes, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah. And suddenly his answer was whoosh, that banner again, Created for the Impossible TV, the vision downloaded afresh and anew. And then the Holy Spirit said, now go for it. And I go, yes. Okay.
You got the green light.
Got the green light, made a phone call, scheduled a meeting with the studio, the Christian television network in our area. I know the station manager, and for that Friday. And then on Wednesday, the Wednesday before that meeting, I met with a gal who's very, very prophetic for coffee. And before I could say anything to her, she's looking at me and she goes, Krissy, have you ever thought about having your own TV show? And I go, my jaw dropped and I didn't say a word because I could tell she had more to say. Yes. And I was quiet. I wanted to hear. And she goes, I don't claim to be a prophet or anything. She's like, but I see things. God shows me pictures. And she's like, I just see you there. I see you having your own TV show. Is that something you've ever thought of? And I go, oh my goodness. Well, why do you, and her, interestingly, her name is Shay. Her name,
nice.
But it wasn't you. It was another amazing Shay. And I said, well, actually, that's what I wanted to have coffee with you about. I wanted to tell you, I have a meeting on Friday. God showed me a TV show. And she's like, oh, yeah. Well, okay, Krissy, it's going to be great. Here's what we need to do. She's like, I actually used to work for that station. And so
wow.
I'm like, oh, well, okay. Not fun. And so then that afternoon, I was across town somewhere else, another coffee shop. And I'm sitting there, drop my daughter off at dance. I'm like, just going to sit here. I don't want to talk to anybody. So I'm sitting at this table, and across the coffee shop is a rabbi friend that I know in town. And he's like saying hi to me. I'm saying hi from afar. And he goes, so do you have your own TV show yet? And I go, and my jaw drops. I'm like, well, I got to get up now. I go over to him. I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, well, actually I have a meeting at the station on Friday, and he's like, oh yeah. And I told him about meeting with Shay earlier that day and what she said. He's like, oh yeah, Krissy, I just see it too. He's like, it's going to be awesome. I'm happy for you. Congratulations. Wow. So by that Friday, long story short, it's like, I'm telling the guys at the station all this, their jaws are also dropping. They're like, are you serious? You didn't say anything to them? I'm like, no. And then they're pulling out contracts and I'm signing papers and I have a show, Yeah.
I love that so much. It's almost like, so God shows you something. And then as you're getting ready, because you're already at and I understand this point where you're like, listen, I'm at a lifestyle of yes. If you've shown it to me, Lord, I say yes. And so you're about to go for it. He says, wait. And then you wait for the green light, and then he gives you the green light. And then
as you move, he confirms multiple times.
Yeah.
On your way there.
Yeah.
Which gives you such peace to be able to sign contracts and do this stuff that's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just here.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that I remember the first time you and I chatted, I was asking you because you were talking about how you really had, you started off in media, but you really had like a vision for something more, and God just orchestrated a whole lot of stuff. And you're just like, I don't even know how I got here today. I just know God. And
yes.
I want you to share that story of how you started with what you had and how you dreamed for more, and how God he was the fullness of provision for you.
Yes. Yes. So in the context of the show, right? And what I shared about the show. Yeah. And so, we did season 1. I can't even remember the years now. I mean, we're in season 2 right now. So it was like last year, which is weird to me. So a year ago, we launched season 1, and it was in the studio. It was with people who know what they're doing, the Christian Television Network, the station managers, the producers. This is what they do for a living, is produce TV shows. So I had their direction, their help in all of that. We're in the studio. I'm showing up with content, and vision. And we built a beautiful set that looks like a living room, because that's what God showed me, a living room. And he said things to me like, my glory. I would hear it like in my head, like his glory from my living room to yours, as I must say it over the airwaves or something. And so I knew it was a living room. We do season 1. And as season 1's kind of coming to an end, I'm like feeling this stirring, like something's got to shift. And I didn't know what it was, but it was like this, I'm getting really comfortable with this. And even though comfort can be great, when you know that when you're used to being stretched, comfort can actually be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because you know that God doesn't usually let us feel so comfortable.
That's right. You got to live in the stretch is what I say.
Like, I'm created for the impossible. Why does this feel possible right now? You know what I mean? Like,
that's
why?
So good. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that then becomes uncomfortable. And you got to be careful what you make yourself available for, because, we're gearing up for season 2. We finished filming season 1 in January, and then we start getting ready to film season 2. We're starting thinking about it in March, right? So it's like, we're going to start filming in April because it's going to premiere in May. So March hits, and I'm like, man, this is feeling a little bit easy. This is feeling a little bit like mundane almost. And you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be unappreciative and ungrateful, because I'm so appreciative, but it's that spiritual kind of,
yes.
And just wanted to clarify that even for people that would be listening. You just know when you're used to being out in the deep water and it's scary, it's like, why is this feeling like the boat right now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I want to be out in the deep, and woo. So we go to breakfast with some friends of ours who are super creative, uber talented, like videographers, worship leaders, writers, like they're filled with super talent, and they're friends of ours. And we're sitting there, and our friend, their names are Amick and Christy Cutler, amazing people. Amick is sitting there. He's asking me questions about the show. He's asking me questions about different things. And all of a sudden, God starts to give him vision for my show. And he's like, Krissy, okay, all right, wait a second. He's like, let me just tell you what God's showing me right now. I see you out of the studio, out like on bridges, out like in the community, on the go, and out of that almost studio box. And actually, I see your show becoming very cinematic and like movie quality, and like really engaging and reaching a different generation and kind of that millennial group and things, and
yes.
More storytelling, more conversational. He's like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, what he was saying, it was like something inside me leapt. And I'm like, I don't even have a grid for what you're talking about other than yes, yes, yes. Things he was describing where God had already shown me, like me on a bridge, but I didn't know what to do with that.
Yes.
And he showed, and so long story short, he's like, I want to help you get there. He's like, I don't want to just cast vision, because this is what they do. Our friends, they're like the people that will journey with you.
Yes.
They're the that will remain until it's going, and they help you start. So he's like, I want to help you get there. So here's what I want to do. I want to offer my time, my talent. I don't want to charge you anything. And I want to produce your first show. I have a friend, and now that friend is now my director of photography, my DP, he's now my producer. He's now our editor. He's like, I'm going to bring him in, and we're going to create this whole new and produce this whole new quality caliber show for you. And I'm like, oh, well,
wow.
Let me pray about that. My God, this sounds terrifying. It sounds like I would be out of the boat. It sounds like you're meeting me in my my sort of place of comfort that I was not comfortable with, saying, here's the deep waters, Krissy, will you go? And I'm like, yes. So that's what we did. We got out of the studio. Now I have a whole new production crew. They're my crew. Suddenly I'm an executive producer, and I don't know how that happened. What ended up happening is suddenly I telling the guys at the studio, we're going to produce this out on our own and rent studio space, which meant I have to know what I'm doing, kind of. I have to produce a show. So I'm like, God. So it's like, as I went, though, I didn't like gather what I needed before I went. It's like I took
as I
went, and I said, God, all right, this is what I need. I need a person to help manage the production. And within 24 hours, boom, God brought me that person. I need an extra person to help with cameras. Within 24 hours, boom, God brings a person. In fact, each one of these people had been given prophetic words over their life about what they were going to do, their call to media. I'm not kidding. Like the one guy, he got a prophetic word the night before. He knew I needed a person, like, you're called to media. And he's like saying, yes, I've been waiting for this. And then boom, he heard about my need.
Orchestration.
Yeah. So now we're there. We're out of the box. We're out of the studio. We're out on the go. We're on bridges. Our season 2 premiere actually just premiered recently. And it's so cinematic. It's incredible. There's a drone camera. I mean, I would never have even been able to do it. But the beautiful thing is this, Shay, is a few years ago, God gave me a vision, and he showed me and my best friend sitting on 2 chairs talking about Jesus, kind of like what you and I are doing now, just the conversation about the goodness of God. She and I were sitting on these chairs talking about Jesus with each other, but there were cameras capturing our conversation. And I'm like, oh, that would be fun. So I asked my friend, would you ever want to do that? Just have, like we do all the time, talk about Jesus, but have cameras capture it so people are in that conversation. She's like, sure. That was about 4 years ago. And so as we're doing the show now, it's like, that's what God showed me. Yes. That's what it was all about. And honestly, we did it a little bit in season 1, but it was still very studio based and it was still very like professional because we were in a studio with professional people.
Right.
And now being out of the studio, we have found a way without trying to purely honor that original vision of I'm just sitting there having a conversation about Jesus with my friend, and the cameras are capturing it, and people are being blessed in the process.
I love it. It's like once you've decided, I'm coming in agreement that I am created for the impossible, things I know nothing about. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But I'm created for that. And I'm saying yes to whatever you have for me. And I'm willing to say yes and then take a step in that direction. And then how he's met you every step of the way.
Amen.
Every step of the way.
Yeah.
So good.
Even with the financial, it's like, it's expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, we're not talking like, oh, sure, let me pull that from my bank account,
Yes.
But it's like, as I went, the provision came. And as I go, the provision continues to come. And the beautiful thing about the name of God is that his name means my provider, yes. Jehovah Jireh, It's like, okay, so I'm created for the impossible. You think I can do anything? Your name means provider. Your name means banner over me. It's like, I'll just keep going and know that you're going to bring the provision as I do. Because without faith, it's impossible to please God, right?
Yeah.
So I know that in faith, I'm pleasing God. And by doing so, he's meeting all the needs of this thing that's his idea anyway. you know?
Yeah,
and so monthly, we have support. It's like a new bill will come, a new expense will come, and then God will move on someone's heart, and they're like mailing me a check. This season, it's been for the exact amount. It's like he's really showing me. I got an invoice for $1,200. Somebody's like, I want to become a business partner. I want to give $100 a month, but I want to give it to you all up front for a whole year. So I'm going to send you a check for $1,200. I receive it in the mail the same day I got the invoice for the $1,200 to pay.
You
cannot make this stuff up, and it's just the truth. And I'm like, if I'm going to tell people, if I'm going to write books and have shows called Creative for the Impossible, I better be living it. And it is scary. But God has proven faithful time and time again. So I'll just keep going and risking it all on him.
So good. I could hang out there. I could hang out with you for a really long time.
Yeah, we need to do that.
We should do that. Tell everybody, I appreciate you sharing. This is so good. Will you share how people can get connected with what you've got going on with the show, the books, wherever? Where do they go?
Yeah. Really, my website, KrissyNelson.com, will get you to, we have to my Facebook page. You know, we're putting content out there constantly, and which is a blessing to have people help with that. And so there's beautiful content going on Facebook. Then we have our YouTube channel, so you're able to watch the episodes on YouTube.
Okay.
Also air on ISN, the Sid Roth, it's Supernatural Network, and then Christian Television Network, various stations around the country. You can check your local listings, but online people are very well versed, and everything's available there. KrissyNelson.com.
I love it. And spell Krissy for everybody.
Yeah, it's with a K, Krissy Nelson.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I hope people are blessed and inspired and encouraged, and step out of that boat.
Step out of the boat. God will meet you. He's already there.
Yeah, the one that draws us.
That's right. Good stuff. You take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.